Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Move, Crush, Count. We are coming to you live on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Excited about our guest, Dr. Angela Mulrooney, a.k.a. the Arsonist. I think I gravitate to people with AKAs or nicknames. I love it. So Move, Crush, Count is proudly sponsored by J&L Marketing. I want you to visit J&L Marketing today so you can look how their innovative approach will help you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. They are the digital marketing agency that will help you outsmart your toughest competition so you don't have to outspend them. In this episode, Angela and I are going to be talking about unleashing influence through personal brands. She's got an inspiring story from being anywhere from a dentist to building multiple successful brands. She's also going to give us valuable insights to discover how our own brand archetypes and how we can discover our own brand archetypes, and then more importantly, choose our own niche choose our niche of mastery. And to me, that's critical because I think a lot of people try to be everything to everybody, and we struggle finding out where we could actually just grow exponentially. So I'm excited about that. Excited to make a difference, grow our brands, and create some meaningful impact on this world. Welcome to the show, Angela.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right, let's dive right in. So tell me a little bit about your journey from how do you go from being a dentist, all right, to becoming a personal branding strategist?
So that journey, I can sum it up really quickly. I had built an amazing brand in the dental world because I was young. I was 28 when I bought my practice, and I turned it into high-end, high-tech practice in a very short period of time. Started acquiring a bunch of skills that allowed me to really niche into working with people who are afraid of the dentist. And just as I had everything perfect, I was on my way to hitting my $1 million a year easily. I had a great team. I had great patients. Then my hand stopped working properly. So I ended up really struggling for a few months, and I was in pain. They were sticking needles in me at the physiotherapy office trying to get my arm to work. So I'd finish my workday, go down 2 floors. They would make me into a pin cushion. I'd go back to work the next day, same thing. They'd have to make me a pin cushion every day after work. And it finally got to a point where I was like, I'm going to take a week off. And my last patient that I was supposed to be seeing was an IV sedation patient. So patient was sedated so that they could get through the procedure because they were quite afraid of the dentist. And when it was time to suture her back up, she had been flapped open, like it was quite messy. I went to pick up the hemostat and my hand didn't work. My hand wasn't going to listen to me. And I'm like, oh no. So I looked at my assistant. I'm like, come outside. I need to tell you something. So I told her what was going on. I'm like, you're going to have to be my other hand. And my left hand is really dexterous, but it's just not my dominant hand. So I'm like, I will be able to, with the kind of sutures we have, I'll be able to put her back together. We'll get everything safe, but I need you to listen very carefully to what I say and put an instrument against my instrument so that I have enough leverage. So we got the patient put back together and safe. And unfortunately, that was the last day I got to practice dentistry. So that sent me on a massive journey of reinvention and, identity crisis too, because I had wanted to be a dentist since I was 2 and I was 32 when that happened. So it really threw me off course because I thought my destiny was to work with people. I loved power tools and blood and, having all this fun with my patients. It was really fun for me. And I had no idea what I was supposed to be. So there was a lot of soul searching that happened with that. And I had all these people advising me who had seen other people go through this, not at my age, but they'd seen other people go through it. And like, you've built an amazing brand, you might as well keep it and just get employees in place of you, get some other dentists to cover your skill set. In a basic practice, that would be a great game plan. In the practice that I built, I had so many different skills that most people don't even acquire in their lifetime because I had gone in and gone on a massive binge of education to be able to serve these kind of patients at a really high level. So I really kind of shot myself in the foot with the way that I built it to not be replaceable. So I struggled with that for 2.5 years. And then when the oil crisis hit in 2015 and my practice was in Calgary, which is all the head offices of oil and gas in Canada, I was like, you know what, this is going down super, super fast. I'm not going to go through another economic crisis when I can't do the work because I bought the practice during the global financial crisis. So I decided to fire sell my practice. I sold it for half of its value because I just knew if I didn't get rid of it quick, Calgary was in for a big setback with the economy. And I was right. Like, it's still set back after all these years still. So I made the right call, but everyone thought I was insane. And then I decided, I need to take a step back. Everyone in dentistry knows what happened because I was a clinic that people referred to. So if I went to dental meetings, people were looking at me with pity and being like, how's everything? And I'm like, "Mwah," and crying because it was just so fresh. So I decided to step away from dentistry, took a year away, and just went back to dancing professionally, which is what I had done since I became a doctor. So I had these two professions, but I just put dancing on the back burner while I focused on building my business. So went back to that after 3 months. My partner and I ended up winning second in Canada and won a berth to represent Canada at Worlds. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So I'm going to build a dance company. I'm going to see what I can do with this. And it grew really fast because people knew me from the stage. And they're like, oh, if I can learn how to perform like her, because I was very different on stage from a lot of the other performers. So it was really easy to build that company. And after a year of just, letting things be and just dancing, all these pieces of what had happened started to kind of click together. And I'm like, okay, this isn't really a loss. Like, it sucks that I can't drill on people anymore. I really like doing that. But I have the ability to take a lot of these strange experiences that I went through and help other people to find their passion in dentistry. Because a lot of people doing dentistry aren't passionate at all about what they're doing. So I built a business coaching company to help them with that. Took to LinkedIn, started showcasing what I knew. And in a year, I went from 200 to 12,000 industry followers on LinkedIn, all with organic tactics. And then people from other industries started looking at me and going, how did you do that? Like, yes, you had built this cool practice, but that was brick and mortar in one location. Now across Canada and starting to be into the US, people knew who I was. And so they wanted to know if I could help them to build their personal brands as well. So that's where Unleashing Influence, the social media agency, came from. And that came into full being on January 17th of 2020. So exactly 2 months before the world shut down. And the team, I had 2.5 full time at that time. And they're like, everyone else is getting laid off. If you need to lay us off, it's totally fine. I'm like, no. Buckle in. We're going to take this thing to the moon. So by 10 months into the pandemic, I had 14 full-time creatives working for me. We just exploded because everyone was pulled out of meetings. Everyone was off the speaking stage. And so it was, I definitely picked the right pony with that one and got the right team in place. So it was amazing.
It's an incredible story. And it's nice that you're able now, well, I assume now, while the agency may have started helping people in the dentist industry, I assume it's in multiple verticals now, because really branding and finding the niches, that's not limited to just one vertical, correct?
Correct. And it's actually, Unleashing Influence is no longer a full-blown agency. So a year after I opened that company, I decided to move to Nicaragua. And I had already sold off one of my companies. So I had sold off the dance company before I did that. Got here and I was like, sweet, I'm going to reset my life and have balance and all these great things. And 3 months in, I was working 100 hours a week again, living in paradise, not seeing paradise. So I came to this massive realization that, what I'd burned down before I left wasn't enough. Selling my house wasn't enough. Changing countries wasn't enough. Selling one of my companies wasn't enough. So I started to look at what I was doing, and I really wanted to just take one company and take it to the moon, take one offer and take it to the moon. So I looked at what my skill set was that I'm really good at, and I'm really good at cracking people open and helping them to see, helping put together what their offer should be in the marketplace. I'm really good at helping people to light fires and burn away the things that don't belong in their life anymore. And I'm really good at helping them to step into their niche and mastery. So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't be running a social media agency, managing these 14 full-time people. I shouldn't be running a coaching company for dentists either. What I really should be doing is just helping people to pivot and helping them to leverage their personal brand to do that, and helping them to become profitable quickly with the beautiful expertise and experience that they have in the world. So that's how we've come to what I do today.
I love hearing stories about people that achieve high levels of success. Now, we have no idea where you'd be from a mindset and fulfillment standpoint if you were still able to practice your dentistry, right?
Yeah.
But clearly this is what this is your why. This is what is fulfilling to you. And I just love how, no matter how you brought up when the agency was just growing leaps and bounds and ultra successful, it still wasn't fulfilling to you, because you were touching on something. It gave you the guidance to go where you're at now, right? But I guess deep down, all that growth, all that success, it still wasn't fulfilling for you. It wasn't why you were here. So, I love that you found it. But I have to say that the first thought that came into my mind when you started talking was, and I think I speak for the patient that was on your table. Thank God that he was under and didn't have to be awake as you guided someone else
Totally.
to close him up.
Yeah. Well, I was in a total panic because I'm like, it was a day that most dentists weren't working. I think we had a long weekend coming up. So I'm like, I don't even know who I can call in to save my butt here and put this patient back together. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
All right. So I was going to ask you what inspires you to focus on personal branding as a way to help professionals, but you kind of you covered a lot of that.
Yeah.
But at what point where was the aha moment other than, all right, I know I shouldn't be doing this. By the way, you're in Nicaragua right now, correct?
Yes, I am. Yes.
All right. If you had told me that in
right
advance, well, if you had told me that in advance, I would have made you turn the camera around so we could have seen the view in the background. But I guess, so I get the idea of like, all right, I'm working on this, but you know what? I'm not fulfilled. This isn't what I'm meant to do, regardless of the success around me. What was the aha moment that made you realize I'm close, but it's really right here? Like what triggered you? Can you hear me? Got a slight technical difficulty. Can you hear me, Angela? There you go. All right.
Yeah, I think we're
good.
Up now.
All right. So
Okay.
Were you able to catch my question?
I think the question was really, how did I land on personal branding?
Yeah, so I get the fact that you weren't necessarily fulfilled and you started getting bogged down mentally and just realized the agency life wasn't for you. But what was the aha moment or the trigger for you that said, this is it right here?
It was when I was trying to figure out, like, what is that one thing that I can do? So I was like, I'm just going to organize this. I'm going to write out all the skills that people are willing to pay me for that I can still do. And so I took all these little sticky notes. There are these fluorescent yellow and pink sticky notes and wrote a skill on every single one of them. And I put them on this whiteboard that I had in my office. And it was 2 feet by 3 feet. And by the time I was done, it was covered in sticky notes. And I was like, this is not helpful. This is just more confusing. So went for a run, went to bed, came back the next morning and woke up with this board staring me in the face. And what I did was I put all the things that I loved doing in one corner and the stuff that I hated in the other corner and just forgot about that. And then put those in order of my favorite things. And the 3 things that came out in the wash were those things that I talked about, cracking people open, helping them to burn things down, and helping them to step into their niche of genius. And that was what made me realize I have no business running a business coaching company. I have no business running an agency. And I like being hands-on with my clients. I don't want someone else doing this. And I wanted to just fully lean into that because I knew that was the part of my day when I got to work with clients on that. That is what gave me ultimate joy. And seeing them succeed and being able to consistently get them the ability to make money from what I was working with them with was awesome. I like measurable outcomes. And what I found was when I had the full-blown social media agency, it was hard to measure how well things were working for these people because I wasn't touching their business. I was only helping them to build out their personal brand. So within what I do now, I'm helping them in 90 days build out their business, build out all their automations, their systems, their personal brand as well, helping them build out an offer, helping them to build out their marketing and their hunting. So they come out with a business in a box by the end of it that they start making money right out of the gate. And for me, that gives me measurable outcomes. That gives me something that I can go, okay, I know every time if you follow all the steps in my blueprint, you're going to get there. And that's why I really settled on the personal branding and doing the 90-day pivot accelerators that I do is because it's measurable. And dentistry is science, it's art. And now I get to combine science and art together in this way that I work with people. And I love it. I get to work with so many smarty pants and really help them to start changing the world.
So you talk a lot about brand archetypes. And in your experience, how's it helped individuals discover their own personal brand?
What I find is once they really understand what their archetypes are, and I play with there's the 12 main ones, and then there's 5 sub archetypes with the system that I use. And when we dig into it and kind of have their top 3 to 5 come out in the wash, what it allows them to do is go, okay, I'm not a freak, I'm not a weirdo. There's other people out there who are like me, because these cards Angela is working with me on didn't come from Angela because of our conversation. They came from, these are how people actually operate. And when they start to see that who they are and what they have been able to do, and the way they naturally interact with the world is just, it is what it is, then we can start working on, what is the light side? What is the advantage of that? Yes, there's a dark side to every archetype as well. And that can come out, when they're resisting something, we see the dark side come out quite nicely. But it allows them to really develop a playbook on, how am I going to frame this? Because you can say something 60 different ways and still get the same point across. But if you do it 60 different ways, you're not going to be consistent. You're not going to have that congruency. And I find it builds their confidence. It gives them that congruency. It gives them a playbook and foundation to really jump from with everything that they're doing, so that no matter where they show up, whether it's on their content, it's in a sales call, it's on a podcast, they come across the way they start to really lean into who they truly are, instead of trying to frame the situation based on what they think they should be doing.
Yeah. It's so nice to be. Let's talk a little. I was going to bring this up later, but let's jump into it now. Let's talk about the importance of being authentic.
It's super important. People have become so sensitive to inauthenticity, right? If you're trying to showcase that you're perfect all the time, no one's going to believe you, and you're going to blow your congruency right then and there, and people aren't going to trust you, right? People want to see that you are honest. They want to see what your value system is. And if people are going to be handing you money, they want to know that you are a good person and that you have values aligned with them. That was becoming important before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, with all the division of our communities, it's become super important to find someone that you want to give your money to. If you're going to be paying them to work with you, they want to know that you're the kind of person that they would support, that they would want to hang out with, that they totally respect.
I feel like it's so easy, at least for me. I get this gut feel when I can tell someone is not authentic and I'm not talking about like, oh, I can tell this person's a dishonest person. I'm not even talking about that. It's almost like I can tell they're wearing a mask. I can tell they're trying to be something they're not. They saw somebody else, they're emulating that person.
Totally.
That's probably the easiest one. And it's just, it's so, to me, it's just like a feeling I get when I see
like
a
spidey
video.
Senses go off, right?
Yeah. And it's just so obvious. And I think to me, that's the number one reason to be authentic, is because I think people are just aware of it. I mean, it just, to me, it's obvious. Do you find that, is it obvious to everybody, or is it,
I think
or am I
people
picky?
feel it. No, you're not being picky. People feel it, whether they recognize why they feel it or not. But for a lot of people, especially if they come from a professional background, like I remember in dental school being told, you have to be professional when you're in front of patients. And they don't really tell you what professional means. Like, professional means you have a professional degree. So you have this little doubt in your mind all the time about how you're interacting, how you're behaving, because you're being told to be this thing that you don't really know what that thing is. And that comes across in all different kinds of professional trainings. And so when people are trying to put themselves out on a platform, like especially LinkedIn, it's all reputation based. They don't want to misstep. They don't want to come across as not being professional. And so then they put up this facade. And, if someone doesn't like that facade, that's so much easier than them not actually liking the real you that you're putting out there. If you get trolled and they trolled the facade, not a big deal. If they trolled the real you that you've been putting out there, that's a big deal. So there's a lot of vulnerability and identity shifting that has to happen when people are going to truly be authentic and truly let their guard down and truly let people in, because it's going to hurt more if someone doesn't like what you're doing. And it can be really hard for a lot of people to take.
So let's get back on the archetype. So what are the most common ones that you see?
The most common ones that I attract, and this is the interesting thing about archetypes, is like you tend to attract certain groups of them. So I tend to attract sages because I work with a lot of thought leaders. So sages are people who are research-based, they're scientific. So people from the medical field tend to have a bit of sage in them. I attract rebels, which is my dominant archetype, because they're people who are trying to change the world. They don't want to be like, oh, let's follow this path that everyone else has followed. They're like, no, let's burn this thing down and start again. Like, they're arsonists. And then I tend to also have a lot of caregivers and rulers. So caregivers are the people who really want to support the world and help people to be elevated. You see them a lot in healthcare, especially if they're in a number 2 role. And then the rulers, hyper type A personalities who want to be the best that they can possibly be, they tend to be in that ruler category as well. So those are the 4 main ones I regularly see come up.
Your quick assessment, what am I?
Great question. So I haven't heard you talk enough to actually know what you are. So it's not even fair. Right. But the move crush count, I would say you're probably a ruler and a rebel would be pretty good assessment, because those are strong words that you're using.
So, we hired a branding agency and I liked it and I went with it. No, so yeah. But more likely it was because I lied. But so all right, so now someone's identified the archetype, right? What's next for them? What do they do?
So when I do that, I do what's called a Crack You Open boot camp. So we do the archetyping, then we learn how to actually leverage that. So looking at how we use our tone of voice differently, how we present content, how do we frame things. And by the end of that, they have a whole playbook. I will write out their whole LinkedIn about section. So we tell their story in that, not just I have a proven track record. Please don't do that. And then I build out their buyer personas. We build out their superpowers, which I assign to them. And it has nothing to do with core values. It's really how I see their unique advantage in the world. So really, I'm helping them to lean into their niche mastery. Once they get into the program, then we start really developing this stuff out. So that's the set point for everything that we're going to move forward. And they have a whole playbook. It's all sectioned out so they understand if I get stuck, I can go back to this thing and refresh my memory on how I operate in the world, what my superpowers are, what my tone of voice is. And then from there, we start building out their personal brand. I give them their claim to fame. We build out, how we're going to create content, what kind of content works with you and works with your audience that's going to give them the best value for when they actually watch what you're doing. Are we going to use podcasts? What methodologies are we going to use? So we actually build out all the marketing as well, so that really they have the ability to get known. They know how to hunt, to get people to recognize who they are, and they start building a lot of trust in the marketplace.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this question. So giving a name or not giving a name doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But let's take one of your clients, okay? Sure. Give us an example, a specific example where someone leveraged their brand archetype and then built a very successful brand.
So so I work with a person who's former CIO of NASA. So she had 40 years in the tech industry. And when she came to me, she was like, I want to be a famous professional speaker. And I'm like, okay, well, I can tell you what being a professional speaker looks like, because that was what I was doing right up until the pandemic killed that. And so I explained to her, you may create impact, you may not create impact. What do you actually want? She's like, well, I want to leave a legacy in the tech industry. I've worked in it. I've won awards. I've landed the rover and helicopter on Mars. I've achieved what I want to achieve within a company. And now I want to create legacy. So I talked to her about, building out masterminds, doing the same kind of thing that I do, 90-day programs where you take a cohort through and you're in the dirt with them. You're helping, you're digging things up. You're very hands-on with them as you take them through your program. And when I explained that to her, she's like, that's totally what I want to do. So she finished the 90-day program at the end or beginning of December. She was off for about a month because she had surgery. And by the end of month 2, so really month 1 of actually being in the market, she had already closed $150,000 in business. So
and how quick was that again?
So it was 2 months out of the accelerator, but really a month out because she was down and out with recovering from surgery. So her goal was to hit 2 million. So she's already well on track to actually getting to where she wants to go, as long as she keeps her hunting going, which is always the thing that people tend to forget to do. But if you keep the hunting going, you keep the conversations going, and you're always looking at what is the minimum effort I can put in to get the maximum reward, then you can get so much more done in a day. So that's what I really harp on them for, is efficiency, 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 because you can waste so much time going in so many different directions. And the stuff that I give them really is a step-by-step to getting to profitability.
So we could probably spend hours talking about people that are not authentic on social media. And it would be easy to call a lot of people out. But rather than do that, let's stay the positive. Okay. Let's give me 1 or 2 examples of some people. And by the way, I think you do. To me, like paying attention to you, right? And so I'm sitting here, extremely authentic, obvious, very knowledgeable about what we're talking about today. So you know your stuff very well. I can tell you're not giving me a bunch of word salads. So
Thank you.
You're not a YouTube graduate, we'll say that. So, which is refreshing. Not for this show. I've had a good string of a lot of very well, not just respected, but clearly know their stuff and own it. I think it's refreshing because when I watch a lot of stuff, I'm like filling in. You're just filling in stuff. A lot of filler. Give us one or two people that you're like really stand out to you, and let's just take social media for this because I think that's the easiest for our whole audience to get. Who's the two people that stand out to you as being extremely authentic, and why?
Number one is Gary Vaynerchuk, always. Not just because he swears, but because he just drops truth bombs all the time. Like, he says what he thinks and he doesn't back away from what he thinks. And if it's not a popular opinion, he doesn't care. So he's one that I really, really like. I actually really like Kevin O'Leary as well, which I know he can be controversial and he can come across as a bit of a jerk, but he doesn't say anything. He owns it, and he's right every time. Whether it felt good that he said that, he's always right when you dig into it. So those two are ones that I really enjoy because they just are who they are and they don't care.
So what do you recommend in terms of someone if I want to balance? Basically, you got three different brands, really. So if you're an employee and you're not running your own show here, you've got your personal brand, you've got maybe a professional brand, and then you've got the brand of the company you work for potentially. And if you have your own business, then you still got your professional brand and your personal brand. So how does someone balance all that? How do you make all that work together?
So let's talk about kind of the entrepreneurs who have their own brand. So they're representing their personal brand and the corporate, and then I can go into the employee one as well. So who you are as a person, especially if you are like the leader of that company, also represents the company for sure. And what I suggest is if you have a company that has a bunch of different thought leaders, for lack of a better term, or influencers that are within that company that you can be featuring, I think that's a beautiful thing because they can represent who they truly are, showcasing their value system, which also reflects on the company. And that stuff can be shared to the corporate page. It can be shared just as the personal brand on the personal page as well. And you will obviously need to be serving the needs of the corporation with what you're putting out there, but you're also showcasing the beauty of who you are and what you know. And that's what I really want people to lean into is own where you're at, own your knowledge. Don't try and be like, well, I know everything about this company. Well, you probably don't, especially if you're in a C-suite position. You probably don't. You've got your little specialization. So stick to that and share your knowledge on that. Now, if you're an employee who is representing, they're trying to build their personal brand while they're working for a company, if they are happy to stay with that company, it's good to let the company know that you're doing it. Because if they see that you're starting to build out a personal brand, it has nothing to do with their company, they're probably going to worry. And I've had clients do this where they're like, I don't care about the company. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm like, okay, you're probably going to get fired. And they do. So it's better to let the company know what you're doing and why. And a lot of companies are happy with that. They're happy to have you putting stuff out there because you're bringing attention to their company, right?
Correct.
So it's not a bad thing, but if they get surprised by it, then there's a question mark on your file and you might get let go because of it. So you got to be really careful with that.
Yeah, I sit here and I think like, all right, let's just take LinkedIn, for instance. Out of all the social networks, that's the one most business, I guess, has the business identity, right? So when I see an employee or a person that I'm connected with on LinkedIn posting good content, educating, and establishing a good brand for themselves. First off, even if they're not, I watch how maybe they're so frequent on it that I'm noticing they're commenting, whether it's on my post or other posts, and they're giving intelligent comments. It's not just kiss ass comments just to be doing it. To me, that builds a brand, whether they're trying to or not, they're building a brand. And I think this person is clearly career focused, headed in the right direction and wants to make a difference, at least for themselves, if not the company. But indirectly, I have to tell you, I always find out who they work with. And I associate, if I don't have any opinion or don't know of the company they work with, because of that person, I do associate a good brand image of that company.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, they go hand in hand. I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm just saying if I don't know anything about the company, they get the benefit of being associated to that employee. So, yeah, I think it always confuses me when companies are out there, because I know a lot of them that don't want their employees doing a lot on social. And it blows me away, because to me, if people do it the right way, and it doesn't mean they have to promote the company, they can brand themselves like you're talking about here. And if they do it in a good way and it somewhat aligns, doesn't have to, and I use that term loosely, you benefit indirectly. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. It is accurate. And a lot of companies, like, okay, 15 years ago, people weren't really creeping on people's profiles, right? And LinkedIn wasn't so big back then. I remember when I had my dental company, you know, if you're looking up someone who applied and you looked on their Facebook and they were in a bathing suit, you're like, oh, scandalous, they don't have good boundaries, can't hire them. But now that's totally normal now for people to be in bathing suits, no matter what their role.
Now we look and we say, hey, doctor, now we say, where in the heck are the bathing suit pictures? No.
Yeah. Keep scanning through.
We can't hire this person.
But yeah. So, but with companies, they do want to go and see, you know, do you have thoughts, right? You don't have to be completely unique in the marketplace, but going in, as you said, like going in and commenting, they will go through and look at your comments and see if you are intelligently weighing in, or if it looks like you're trying to pave your path into another company, they'll look at that as well. But if they see that you are smart and you're using your social media well, they're not going to be worried about it. And they are going to see that, you know, you probably are someone who's going to be innovative and creative in their company and be additive, because they're not just trying to, you know, subscribe just to the company. They have a viewpoint. So the chance that they're going to become an entrepreneur within your company, if you allow them that, that's a beautiful thing as well for a lot of companies. And, you know, the generation coming up doesn't want to just be a number in a company. They want to be contributing. They want to be building their own worth in the company, not just because of the degree that they had. So that's a big bonus for a lot of companies if they have that culture of giving a little bit of leeway for people to become entrepreneurial within a company. It's amazing.
What's the best way for someone to communicate their let's say their personal brand? Could be to a wide variety of people. Let's say it could be a client, it could be an employer. If it's a business owner, it could be to a potential employee even. So, like, what are some of the best ways to do that?
Always give your best. So I always tell people, like, you're auditioning all the time. So your content is an audition, your sales calls are an audition, your interview with a company is an audition. So you wouldn't go to an audition and be like, oh, I'm just going to kind of half-ass it today, because you're not going to get the position. Right. So if you're going to be putting yourself out there, give your best stuff. Like the stuff that my clients, my high ticket clients pay me is the same stuff I share on my free challenges. It's the same stuff I share on my free content, because I know that I'm auditioning. If I give you my best, you're going to be like, what do I actually get when I pay her? So that's one of the things that I highly suggest. Also, figure out what your top 3 skills are, and those are what you want to talk on. So become an expert in minimum or maximum 3 things. And you can create a ton of content around all that and figure out how those become your niche. So you're not going to be like, I do this and I do this and I do this. Package it in a way that makes it understandable for the marketplace, because if they can see at a glance, and when they look at your title, you either want to have them lean in with curiosity, like the arsonist is curious for people, or you want to just like hit them over the face with exactly what you do. But don't just be like, I'm CEO of blah, blah, blah. What is your role? What is the legacy that you're trying to create? That's what I would like to see people put as their subtitle on their LinkedIn.
I've got a good friend I'm going to talk with about just what you just said, because I think they've got a lot of different things going on, and it can be somewhat confusing. So to package it that way, I think would help quite a bit. Let me ask you, all right, I'm building my brand image. What are the typical obstacles that I'm going to run into? What are the challenges I'm going to face that you see? And then more importantly, how do I get over those things quickly or overcome them?
The number one is fully stepping into your niche, because most of us are spending 95% of our day outside our niche. And so when we get rid of all that crap and there's only 5% left, it's easy to be like, oh, I need to bring other things in, and we start going back to our old habits, or we just fill our day with other things. So once you know what your niche is, what I suggest is you put your top 3 things that you're going to do on a board in front of you. And when someone asks you to do something outside of those top 3, you say no, and you refer them out. Now that is terrifying, because especially if you've been making money with that 95% that isn't your niche of mastery, you're going to be scared that you're leaving money on the table. Some people are able to just like rip off the Band-Aid. The rebels especially are like, I'm just going to burn it down and this is all I'm going to do. And they get success fast if they are putting out the right message with their content, and they can rebuild their company based on just that niche of mastery. For people who are a little more timid, slowly start saying your no's. Slowly start moving yourself into that niche of mastery. But the sooner you can get into that niche, truly, you're going to be happier. You're going to probably make a whole lot more money. It's going to take you less time to make that money, because when you're really good at something, you're just in your niche of genius. You're zoned in, you're doing amazing things that just come easily to you. And when you get to that barrier point of like, oh my gosh, this isn't working, maybe I should get a job, maybe someone said something and made me completely doubt that I should even be charging people to do this, know that that's just a little gremlin. My little gremlin's name is Sarah. So I just tell her to shut up when she starts saying things like this, because that's not me. I know I have the ability to change the world. I know the kind of outcomes that I can get for clients. And all of you do too, right? So you need to lean into that part of you. I suggest naming that little gremlin something that is not your name, so it feels like an outside entity. And the more you can push that away and tell it to be quiet, the more quiet it's going to get. But you have to be aware of those doubts. And a lot of times those things that we're telling us, I call it shoulding all over yourself. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing this. Is outside people have told us something, and then we've internalized and we're like, well, this must be true because they knew more about it than I did. But you know instinctually what you should be doing. You know the parts of your day that you get excited, you get butterflies because you get to do it. You know the kind of clients that you're excited to see on your schedule, and the ones that you're like, oh, not today, right? So if we can get ourselves more towards who we want to work with, the work that we love, that's where you're really going to take off. You're going to make more impact. You're also going to make more money, and you're going to have more success and achievement in your life.
I love what social media has done. So I come from back in early 90s. I come from the world of Jay Abraham. And from a marketing standpoint, back then, I mean, branding was an afterthought. It wasn't that it wasn't important. It was clearly important, and he taught it. But what he really taught was direct response. And direct response, if over 50% of your marketing budget or advertising budget wasn't going to direct response, in other words, advertising or marketing designed to get an immediate response, generate a lead, then you're doing it wrong, to summarize it. But today, I've changed on this a lot, and I think social media plays a big role in that. You know, back before social media, you know, organic branding in terms of how you treat people, the experience you do, I think that was important and played a big part. But let's face it, if you weren't spending millions of dollars on mass media and stuff like that, it was going to be hard to build a brand the way it can be done today. Social media has leveled that playing field. Talk to us a little bit about how people can leverage social media and the impact it can have, and more importantly, you know, the right way to do it.
So I have built 3 companies 100% through organic. So my professional dance company, I built through Facebook. My business coaching company for dentists, I built through LinkedIn. My social media agency, and now what I do, is still 100% organic LinkedIn. So you can build massive companies just leveraging these platforms. And these platforms are so strong. Like if you look up your name and you have optimized your profile is going to come up way before your website does. So you have the ability to leverage what they've put so much money and technology into to build these platforms and get them out there. Why wouldn't you? Yes, it takes a little bit of bravery, because you have to be willing to put the true version of you, not the facade, get the true, vulnerable, authentic version of you out there. But if you are willing to do that and be brave and know that you're going to stumble publicly, you're not going to be perfect out of the gate. You're never going to be perfect, to be honest. But if you're willing to grow in front of people's eyes, that's a big credibility factor for people. And people are voyeuristic. They love to watch reality TV. So watching you grow on your social media is like watching reality TV. So the way to do it right is package yourself well, really lean into that niche, be authentic, own exactly where you're at, and share generously. Give them your best stuff. Don't hold back, because again, it is always an audition.
So when I first started doing the podcast or even just recording videos on social, I really struggled. And I had to get over the mental block of worrying about what everybody else was thinking in terms of my reasoning, right? My whole reasoning was, I need to bring attention. I want to grow the businesses. That was it.
Yeah.
But in my head, I was worried about, is this person or this person going to think I'm doing this for me? I'm making this all about me instead of what it's really about. And so there were some struggles with that. And then going to something that you just said, first off, how do you advise someone to get over that? So if you're advising someone to be branding, I mean, clearly, if you feel like they should be on video or would do a good job in it, you're going to recommend it. But what if they're not comfortable? How do you get people over that hump?
So part of it is they go through this course that I have called Captivate Your Audience. So even if they're in the 90-day program, they have to go through Captivate Your Audience while they're going through the 90-day program, because it teaches them how to get comfortable. And honestly, it takes weeks for them to get to a point where they are awesome.
Yeah.
So don't put the first video that you put out there, that you've ever made out there. Record it, watch it the next day, and evaluate it and see what you could do better. If you need help, get a coach or take a course like Captivate Your Audience. I was going to give you tools to actually help yourself. Yes, you want to get, I know everyone wants to put out an amazing thing on their first try. You might not. But if it's good enough, get it out there. And get other people to look at it and get them to tell you, does this actually seem like me? Is this how I actually talk? Because what often happens is when we're in front of this little black hole, we tend to start getting in our head, and our little gremlin comes out and starts whispering in our ear that we shouldn't be doing this. No one wants to listen to us. What if someone steals our ideas? All these things start going through our head, and that's enough to stop you in your tracks. So get comfortable. You're not going to get to the point where you're going to look like you've been doing it for 10 years necessarily, but you'll get to the point where it's good enough and you can get it out there. And once you get the first one out there, you might have crickets for the first 90 days of putting content out there, because there's so much crap out there. There's so much to even be consuming. It takes a while to people to publicly engage with your stuff, especially on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a reputation site. So if someone goes on and likes your stuff and then you get called out for something bad, then they're like, oh my gosh, I supported that person. Now my reputation is tarnished. So you're going to be probably crickets for the first 90 days, but you got to keep doing it anyway. Put out one video per week for those 90 days. And eventually the audience will start to trust you and go, okay, this person has something to say. They're interesting to listen to. They're giving me good information. Okay, now I'll give you a like. Or if they go really far, they're going to give you a comment, right? And it's interesting to watch the psychology, because on like Facebook, people will just throw likes and loves around. Same with Instagram. They don't really care because nobody cares about your reputation on there. But on LinkedIn, it is a professional site. It is a business site. So reputation is everything. So know that you got to kind of have rhinoceros skin about this, and be willing to put in the reps for those 90 days and feel like you're getting nothing. And it will eventually come.
I also think that's where being authentic comes into play as well, because, all right, this show's live, right? I've done it now over 100 times, and I've done this intro I don't know how many times, and I botched it today. I was sitting there stumbling over my words, but I got to tell you, if this was in the beginning of this show, I would have been like, I'd have been stressed about it. That would have bothered the heck out of me. Now, I'm surrounded by a ton of unprofessional friends who embarrass me on the regular, and so I'm fine with being embarrassed. I don't really care anymore, so I'm comfortable with it, right? But
totally,
that doesn't come without repetition and some frequency to it. So it took a while to get there. And
authenticity honestly kind of needs to be learned, because we're so used to not being authentic, right? So getting comfortable with yourself and just being like, whatever happens is not easy for most people. As when you're coming out of the gate, you're going to be super self-conscious, and if you happen to get trolled, that can really knock you off your course. I actually got trolled this past week. Someone wrote something and showcased some stuff that they shouldn't have showcased about something that was on a private group, and then all these people started weighing in and like tagging my name on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh my god, what is happening? Because they're saying these awful things, and I'm like, you don't even know me, you've never interacted with me. And I was like, maybe I should just delete my account. Maybe I should just quit. I've been doing this for a long time, so I understand if you're like newer in it, it's really easy to get knocked off center. Even if you've been doing it for a long time, it's easy to get knocked off center, but you have to realize, like, why are you doing it? And what kept me going when I was going through this, I was like, well, I know that I put a lot of good into the world. I know that I'm very generous with my information. This guy's a tool, and he's just doing this for attention. It's not a big deal. It'll eventually get covered up by other content that's going up. So I didn't even respond to him. One of my friends went on and like called him out, and he got an apology. My friend got an apology from this guy for what he did. And I'm like, where's my apology, dude? You're the one trying to tarnish my reputation here. So it's a lot. It can be a lot when you're putting yourself out there. So you have to be ready for that as well.
Oh, and they're ready to attack you on social. I mean, they're ready to come at you. So you got to be ready for that. You brought up something earlier in this part where you said people like to watch. It's almost like watching reality TV. You said something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so it reminded me of an interview I did with a really well-known influencer, millions of followers, and I was telling him similar to what you did, because this was early on in this show. I think it might have been episode 5 or 6. It was really early. And I said, I don't, for lack of a better word, I said, I don't feel comfortable flexing on social. I don't, and this guy flexes. I mean, it's probably his brand is a major flexer. And I go, I can't do it. And he goes, don't look at it like that. And I'm not suggesting people get out there and brag about what they do and all that type of stuff. But I'm saying, he goes, it's more of like MTV Cribs. He goes, people love the behind the scenes stuff of what's going on. Yeah. I've never seen that. My parents told me about it. But that's that's the analogy he tried to give. So
yeah,
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you can be showcasing dimension. So when I talk to people, like I'm running my challenge this week, and we were talking about content today, and I'm like, there's 3 buckets of content that you can be showcasing yourself with. One is frequently asked questions, and not like your business hours frequently asked questions, but the questions that people ask when they are in a vulnerable state with you. Talk about what those questions are and how you answer and how you help people with those, right? And give them something tangible that they can go and help themselves with. So frequently asked questions are kind of like cheating, because if you've paid attention to any of your phone calls, you know what the questions are that people are going to ask. Then the next one is behind the scenes. So showcasing like how you do things or how you work with people, why you do things the way that you do. So if you're like studying something new, talking about why you're studying this new thing, how you're actually applying it with your clients. That's a really cool thing for people. That's a really good voyeuristic thing for people to see. Another one of the voyeuristic tactics is also, though, when people can see a before and after. So it might be that the case is done, right? So you can showcase the whole case. But sometimes it's a work in progress. And if you have, like for a lot of people starting out, if you have to give someone a discount, make a deal with them that they have to video journal through the journey with you and be okay with letting you put it out on social media so people can see what the growth pattern is like working with you. What is the mindset shifts that they're getting? What are the wins that they're getting in real time? And people love seeing that kind of stuff. And when you can get them to talk honestly and vulnerably about what their journey is like, then people go, oh, that's me. Oh, I kind of need to help with this. And they're more likely to actually buy from you too, because they've got social proof of the journey in a way that they can see themselves in it.
That's a good point. I wrote those 3 down. So
I saw that.
when I'm looking down, that's not that I'm not paying attention. I'm writing. So I got my notes. You mentioned early on in the show, one of the things that I don't want to say you didn't like, but didn't bring you great satisfaction is you couldn't measure the immediate success of what you were doing with the social media agency, right?
Yes.
What are the metrics in terms of what are you measuring now to determine whether or not this personal brand is working? How are you measuring that success?
Flat out sales.
Okay.
The dollars
And then
and cents.
how long would you tell someone this is how long it takes to build that?
So I guarantee anyone who joins my 90-day program that they'll get a 5 times ROI in the first year.
Okay.
So 5 times ROI on their tuition. And
yeah,
once you're in with me, you've got me. You have my Rolodex, you have my time, whatever you need to actually get that ROI. I've got you to make that. And that ROI is, I want them to make minimum 125,000. Most of the people who come to me, they are wanting to hit the $1 million mark. So they usually make that 125K in the first 90 days outside the program. And then we just carry it on from there. But the minimum that I'm aiming for with anyone with that intensive is 125K.
So first off, do you ever get back up to the States?
I do, when I'm speaking.
How often?
Yes. Well, actually, I took the last year off from speaking in person. So I gave myself a gift of just grounding myself to be here. But the last time I was up, it would have been like early January is when the whole, the version of Corona that was super contagious was happening. So that was January of 2022.
So I know you like business.
Yes.
Do you like bourbon?
I don't really know much about bourbon, to be honest, but I'm willing to try. I'm going
to assume this answer is no because of your former profession. Do you like cigars?
I actually do like cigars. I don't. Wow. I have like maybe one a year. It's not like something I engage with often, but I do like cigars.
All right, I'm going to talk to you off air because I think there's some synergy that we could really work out. I think I love what you teach, and I love your level of expertise with this. What advice would you give someone that's just starting out on all this stuff? How do they start? Let's say I want to take it. Let's say they don't contract with you, right?
Yeah.
What advice? You're speaking on stage. Obviously, there's going to be a percentage of people that never reach back out to you, but they're listening to you for a reason. And so what do you say to those people that plan to do it and try it on their own? How do they get started with this, and what should they do first?
The first thing is what I would teach them in my What If You Burned It to the Ground keynote, which is, what is your dream life? What is the life that you actually want? Regardless of where you are right now, if you could burn everything down and start again, what would that look like? What kind of work are you doing? Who are you working with? How much money are you making? How much money is in the bank? Who are the people that you're hanging out with? Where are you living? All that kind of stuff. Because once you know what that is, then you can direct everything into that direction, right? If you're building something like, I built 3 companies after I lost my ability to practice dentistry. And I was just building things out of reaction. I was like, "Ooh, I have this talent, so I should build a brand around this." And so I was just reactive, and there wasn't a flow to it. There wasn't really that much intention to it. I was just like, "Oh, this is fun, and I'm really good at building companies, so why not?" I don't recommend doing that. What I recommend is figuring out, like, what is the life that you want, and how are you going to move it that way, into that way. And it was funny because that whole thing came from, I was laying in bed with a boyfriend, and he rolled over and asked me, "What does your dream life look like?" And that is how I ended up in Nicaragua. That's how I ended up selling off my companies. That is how I ended up doing what I'm doing today. Because I envisioned what my life was like, and my current life was nothing like it. I was working 100 hours a week. I was addicted to serial entrepreneurship. So figure out what that dream life is and start making choices to move yourself closer and closer to it. That means the company that you want to set up, build it in a way that you're going to be doing work that you love. Build it in a way that you're going to be working with clients that you love. So you have to know what those things are. Otherwise, you're going to build a company that's kind of, if it's successful and it's not what you want, you're going to have this beast that you hate. And that's the worst thing that you can possibly do. So dream life, figure out what kind of work you want to do, and then start taking actions, start burning away the things that don't belong, and slowly get yourself closer and closer to that dream life that you want.
Incredible show today. I really appreciate you coming on and helping our audience with building their brand. I thought you did an incredible job. That's a wrap for today's Move Crush Count. I will say this: you're coming from is Nicaragua in a blue zone?
We're right beside the blue zone. There have been questions about whether it is like the next blue
Reaches
zone.
over. Yeah. I was just in Costa Rica. Doesn't it border?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So I was just in there late February for a couple weeks down there. I love it down there. It was awesome. So I'm a little envious of where you're living and the choice you made. It's awesome. We all have those choices, by the way. It's just that we all come up with our own excuses as to why we sometimes can't make them.
It's true. Shutting all over yourself.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into unleashing influence through personal brands. Thanks again, Dr. Angela Mulrooney, for joining us, helping the MCC community. If you want to stay up to date, I want to put if you guys are watching us, unleashinginfluence.com. And if you want to take a shortcut, you can do the /contact. But unleashinginfluence.com, you can reach her there. And I highly recommend that you do so rather than shorten your learning curve, everyone. I can tell you, I'm starting a new business, by the way, with the business Bourbon and Cigars, which is one of the reasons I asked you that earlier. And I learned a lot from the other businesses I've started, and I am taking shortcuts. And no matter how successful you have been or are, there are all kinds of people out there that can help you. And Dr. Angela is one of them. So make sure you reach out to her. And if you're thinking about improving your brand and building a brand and online presence and want to have some type of influence, I think she can help you quite a bit. So if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to visit movecrushcount.com so you can subscribe and get caught up on all the past episodes and so you never miss a future one. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure you visit our sponsor, J&L Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you don't have to outspend them. Go to jnlmarketing.com today so you can discover how they can help you move the crowd, crush your competition, and count the money. We'll see you on the next episode, everyone. Thank you.